Year.Game series has ended. It's been 11 months of trying to dive into the history of video games and of the world itself and find out what was the more relevant thing to talk about and, well, oftentimes failing. This show is about what the series should have been, wasn't, could have been, would probably be in the hands of someone more capable, and the many goofs that took place across its 40-something episodes. So what was the idea behind the series? Thomas Nopers, you may know him as Noppy, he was on the Indie Game Life series a while ago. He made a tweet last year about his favorite movies in each year since he was born, and I thought I'd do that, so I stole his idea. But I didn't want it to just be my favorite games of those years. That would be a bit pointless. A bit, well, I may still do exactly that someday, but I felt I could do a bit more. So the idea was I would be on camera and talk about a few of the games that came out each year and then say which one would have been probably the most descriptive one for that year or the best of that year. The idea was that I would be on camera because I would then not need to get all the footage for all the games, which would have made editing it and just slapping it together so much easier and simpler. But when that happened, I still had not yet really, I had just gotten the camera, the FZ2000. By the time it was usable and I could play around with it, the first show in the series already had to be made. That's one of the problems I generally have with these shows. I come up with their idea in the week I have off a year. At the end of the year, I don't think I'll have one this year because second job is increasing complexity. And then I pretty much have like 1 or 2 days to make the, not just that first episode, but to plan out the entire year's worth of every show. So to make all the graphics that I need for a show, to make all the framework, the infrastructure, and it's not always going to be the best possible result. It quite often is the worst possible result, and I tend to tweak it a bit in the second season. And because I'm probably an idiot, a season for me lasts for 1 year, which is why the shows tend to get really slowly updated. I mean, upgraded to better versions. So because I couldn't really use the camera for that first show, I never used it. So everything was with only voiceover, and that meant having to get footage from all those olden video games. Now, my luck was that I have an account on that P-Term emulator thing that's running Play-Doh. Lets you play old mainframe games. Also, there's the fact that YouTube is filled with videos of old games, which I did my best to attribute to the people that shot the videos there at the end with the credits. Probably could have done a better job of actually putting their names like in the actual sequence that was taken from their channel. That's probably what I should have done. I didn't, because that was a lot more work, and time isn't really in my favor when it comes to making these shows. Because they come out once a week, but I make daily content, and there's a second job, especially since summer and in January and since summer, and I don't have time to do it properly, is what I'm saying. Especially since I decided to add the angle of putting historical events. I did that initially mostly because, well, there weren't games in the 60s, and I couldn't start it till later because that would have been an incomplete version of the story. I actually think I should have started a bit earlier because, well, there was Tennis for Two. Tennis for Two would have been something I should have probably focused on a bit more. I did mention it in the first video, and there was the footage from the replica of the Tennis for Two machine. And the initial version that I came up with around August of last year wasn't going to be on a year-by-year basis for the show structure. Well, by that I mean there wasn't going to be a show for a year. It was going to be several years within the show, maybe like 5 years or a decade, condensed, sort of like what the last episode was. But because there wouldn't have been games in the first ones, and I didn't want to make them condensed and then expanded, though I did condense, I think it was 70 and 71 to one episode because I really didn't find many games back then. I had to fill time with something. I didn't want to just make it a 2-minute video where I say, yeah, nothing came out this year, goodbye. And I latched onto the idea of, okay, these games were made in that year, but what does that mean? What happened that year? Why were these games made like that back then? Who made them? Why? I don't think I've answered properly to the last two questions of who made them and why. Again, I think this show, Better Handle, would have delved deeper into the developers themselves, not just the end products, and the actual motivations of the developers, not just the fact that the games came out. I did sort of try and do this at the beginning a bit, because there were fewer games back then, and they were a lot easier to talk about, and how they were born, how they were made, and why. But as time went on, I couldn't really do that. There were too many of them, and studying each and every one and figuring out exactly what made them all tick, I didn't have time for that, like at all. As you may have seen, the show has been delayed quite a few times. Even when I was sick, I still managed to get it out the week it should come out, but it would vary from Saturday to Sunday, which is something that is never nice. I think the last show, I actually finished that one on time, but Raul seems to have published it on Sunday. Well, technically, as I'm recording this now, it's still not published, so I'm hoping everything's okay and it will be up in time. Otherwise, this video is going to be what final episode? It didn't finish anything. But anyways, back to the idea. Since I was going to do that, I was going to give context for the games. It made the earlier stuff seem a bit better fitting, such as talking about the technology that was responsible for the birth of video games and all. And I still think that the main reason why we have games as we have them today is because of Ralph Baer. I know that even in the first video, some of you commented that, well, even if there wasn't Ralph Baer, there would still been video games. Yeah, absolutely. Eventually, we would have gotten there, but face facts. He made a console, a home video game console, before even arcades existed. Home video game consoles, if they would have come out, they would have come out a lot later without him. That is why I started with him. Well, that and the fact that it was 50 years since he made the brown box, and 2017 was 50 years from that point, so it would have fit. Like, I would have made like maybe 4 or 5 shows at the end of 2017, and it would have been a really nice fit with, 50 years, 5 shows, decade for each, something like that. But I couldn't. The end of 2017 was really busy with other things and stuff, and it didn't work, so I had to push it through 2018 and made it a whole thing for the entire year. Now, the end result, I'm not happy with it. For one, I did miss a couple of games, a couple of important games I just glossed over. I would sometimes make corrections, and you've seen a lot of them. For example, the Apple Manor thing, that was technically probably even an older rogue-like game, even before Rogue, and I sort of fudged it on that. I fudged it in a couple of situations. I mistakenly called Windows 8 Windows 10, and a lot of other things that I did mention in future shows that I would say I made corrections for them, but there are still things I missed, and I missed them because I got most of my information about the release dates of games, well, from the release dates of games, and games, especially in recent years, they are not their release date. Warframe, for instance, has not yet been released. It is not a fully finished game, and it will never be. That game will never have a release date, so you'll not find it anywhere as being released, technically. It's still in beta, but it did come out in 2013, and I didn't mention it at all in 2013 because I was going by release dates, which was a bad idea. I did mention it in 2014 though, so by that time it did grow in popularity, and it did reach the point where it became as impactful as it is now. But I also missed a bunch of other things. I missed mods. Yeah, I did mention the first one, but there were a lot of mods that just evolved with time and became prototypes for other games. For example, Darkness Falls: The Crusade, that was made by Mythic in '99. It was the backbone for Dark Age of Camelot, and I made no mention of it. I know it may seem like it would have been a bit more of a specialized, like, niche thing, but that was sort of the point of the series, is not just taking into consideration the popular stuff, but the smaller things, the things that people in the industry, people in the know would be aware of, that influenced them. And I've missed that a bunch of times in the series. One other thing, a major thing that I missed was multimedia games. The multimedia craze, where they weren't really games per se. They had game qualities, they have game characteristics, but they're mostly a vehicle to drive CD sales, if you will. Multimedia games used to be big, gigantic in the 90s, and I don't think I ever mentioned one of them at all, not even Bananas in Pajamas, because there was one. Something else very important that I totally glossed over was, well, the first E3. I forgot to mention E3. Also, I in the sense that I was giving context of the human element of what happened in the world, I missed like probably two of the world's biggest disasters. The earthquake that took place in China, and well, it was the greatest tragedy of the last century in terms of natural disasters. Yeah, I kind of forgot to mention that. And the last one, the 2004 was it? The earthquake that basically wiped off a few islands off the map for a while. Kind of glossed over those, which really boils down the basic fact that I didn't go into the series fully prepared. Like, they should have had more legwork, more groundwork, I think that's the proper term, before actually committing to it. I just had a general idea of how it was going to flow, how things were going to be made, but not the specifics, or the outlines of the specifics even. That's something I should have done from the get-go. Like, focus on this, just have like an outline for each year. So if anybody's gonna do the series proper, I recommend starting out that way. Like, have a plan, have a detailed plan for what you're gonna do. So this way you'll make sure you won't miss things like I did. Also, in regards to the Final Fight thing, yeah, Final Fight didn't really reinvent the wheel, so sorry. Another thing that I'm kind of bummed out about is, well, the series was supposed to be made as a reflection of the era it was in. Each episode was supposed to reflect that era. One way we thought of doing this was by changing the intro from time to time. It was supposed to start with the oscilloscope, then about, I guess, 5 years in, change to something that's more of a like 4-bit pixel art thing, and then constantly evolve until it reaches the present. The problem was that we couldn't find the intros that we needed. We found like 2 or 3 of them, so we had 3 ages basically, but we couldn't find any other. And these weren't cheap. Okay, back then Steam was doing fine, so we had a budget to actually invest in getting the show proper graphics, but we just couldn't find them. So I left the intro with the oscilloscope because, well, the argument is that that's where games started, and I think it still works as an argument. At one point I was thinking about gradually degrading the visual quality of the intro to make it seem older and faded, but at one point I forgot about it, and well, again, have a plan. A plan helps. Now, what I did plan, and this was really close to actually getting done, was to change the music for each episode, different music. Now, I love Chinese Eyes. It's one of my favorite tracks from the Dune soundtrack by Stefan Peek. It's superb, but it wasn't the initial piece I wanted to use for the series. It was just supposed to be used for 1992. That's it. Or not even the whole of 1992, but maybe part of it. The idea was to use the music that was popular in that year, or maybe that decade. Not even, okay, not a decade. A decade is still long. 1-2 years. Change it. Every 1 to 2 years. And it wasn't going to be game music, it was going to be actual music rendered in chiptune form and 8-bit MIDI form. And I did find some great tunes, and I did get the blessing of the people that made the conversions to 8-bit to use that music in the video. The problem is that YouTube's algorithm picked it up as being the original and not the the 8-bit version, and instantly slammed the "no monetization allowed, you are going to work for free for us." And I wasn't really comfortable with that, since we're talking about something that is probably, well, let's say on average 12 minutes of video, because some of them were 20 minutes long, some of them were 7 minutes long. Let's say 12 minutes of video. That's 9.5 hours of documentary. Even if it's 10 minutes, that's still 8 hours of video. That's something I would want monetized. I would want it to generate some revenue, because it takes time to make it, time that I could use to work for a living, and as we've seen, Steam sort of went up. So keeping this monetized was a good idea. Well, if it ever actually gets traction, which probably won't. And because of this, I sort of ditched the idea of having songs from that era in each episode. Like the Painted Black in 8-bit sounds amazing. And it was started with Painted Black because it was a popular song thing. I know it was released technically the year before it was supposed to start, in 1966, but it was close enough that I would have used it. The first episode was going to have So Happy Together by the Turtles as well, again in 8-bit form. It sounded amazing, and it would have gone on like this until the present. You'd have found, I don't know, Britney Spears' Toxic maybe in 8-bit form as well. Maybe some Nightwish sprinkled in there somewhere, but YouTube doesn't give you the freedom to do that kind of thing. It is really strict about using music. Thankfully, the soundtrack of Dune is not in the list of things YouTube will kill you if you try to use. Though I do definitely owe Stefan Pix some beer, probably a couple of crates, trucks full of it, because that song's amazing and it fits so well with the theme, the sort of nostalgic, a bit downish, not all that bright. It's a magnificent song. Just makes you think of the olden days and staring out into the endless desert that used to be humanity. Yeah, the series sort of ended in a bit of a downer because, well, it's not that things are bleaker now than they used to be. It's that the hope that we had, that we accumulated over the past decades, sort of veered off a cliff because the technology that we use, the technology that brought us here, is now being used against us. It's, well, to use another Dune reference, it's a trap, and we can see it, but we can't do anything because we're in it. But that's a topic for probably a different channel. Oh, and yeah, something that I also kind of neglected was, in regards to gaming, I mean, there were a lot of events. I don't mean the events like E3 or Gamescom. I don't think I even mentioned Gamescom once, or at the ESC, the one that was in Great Britain that got cancelled like in 2003 or 4. I mean, things that happen in video games. The driver debacle, that I mentioned it like a year later. The EA spouse thing, that was amazingly big when it happened. I forgot it completely. I just not even a peep about it. And that's something that absolutely shaped the industry, people's perception of it, and its hypocritical attempts to correct itself where it doesn't actually do anything and just sort of pretends like, oh, everything's fine, man, everything's hunky-dory. Yeah, people are living in their cars because we don't pay them enough. We're evil. I know this is a bit of an exaggeration, but it's... The industry is not in a healthy state, and that's probably because the economy in some areas is not in a healthy state, and it's a really complex topic with few easy answers. That's probably should be saved for a different show. But for me, well, that's it. This was my attempt to make a series that details the history of video games, and at the end, pretty much what I can say is, starts off nice, but it sort of meanders and messes things and messes up things and forgets things and badly attributes some things and neglects other stuff. And there's also the issue with Nintendo games that I can't really use footage from them quite often because Nintendo will have my head. Also, it's the main problem that it was made by me. Now, the reason why most of shows like these are made by several people is because several people may have had different life experiences. They have had grown up with something other than what I grew up with. I grew up playing with corn cobs. Then later on, I got a clone of an Atari 2600. Then I graduated to knockoffs of ZX Spectrums from my neighbor. Then with the NES knockoff, while everybody was playing PlayStation games. Then I jumped to a PC, and truthfully, the PC is where I really got into games, because at that point, well, piracy, not piracy, but piracy was always a thing where I came from. None of these were licensed games. Even the consoles we got, they were not licensed. Their games were not licensed. Everything was piracy. But you still have to pay the pirates for the games, whereas with the PC, you could get it on a disc from a friend and keep it. You could share games. That was how I really got into games, because that's the only way I could afford to. And because it was a PC, I could use it for different things that weren't gaming related. I could work on it. I could learn typing. I could do so many wonderful things on it, like learn 3D modeling and then never actually model anything. I tried to model a barrel once You know how you don't model a barrel by building a barrel, you just draw a line and then use it as an edge and replicate it on 360 degrees point in the middle. But it's mostly that I'm based on the PC and maybe on some old console games. So there was a cutoff point for me beyond which I had no personal experience with. But were this to be made by several people with the different world experiences, they would have known what Nintendo games to focus on. Then maybe given Wind Waker a better spotlight, more attention. Maybe Majora's Mask could have been better explained. Maybe somebody that grew up with a PlayStation wouldn't have just focused on Crash Bandicoot or something else. They would have gone into details about other things, especially Sega as well. Sega has become an even more obscure console as time went on because of the Sega consoles, I mean the last few, the Genesises and the Dreamcasts. This was as much about the culture of the platforms of gaming as it was about the games that were made and the events of the world that shaped them. And I really kind of failed on that part, again, because it was just made by me. One person isn't enough for something like this. So if you're gonna make your own, keep that in mind. Get more people with you. People with vastly different experiences when it comes to video games. Brainstorm together and form a plan to cover as much as possible, because that way I think you could make a better version of this. And please feel free to use my version as a starting off point. Just make sure to correct any mistakes I've made. Otherwise, you will just be repeating some of the things I got wrong. Well, I guess this would be it. Next year there won't be a year.game series because, you know, we've done that already, and it was maybe too much work for what I had time to actually do properly. I'm not sure if I'm going to replace it with something. I'm really thinking of toning down content for next year. So no more daily stuff, because doing daily content with a day job and probably something else on the way, it is not sustainable. I have health issues I need to be concerned about and take care of. So next year, probably no more daily content, maybe 3 shows a week. I think that will be doable, especially if one of them is the podcast. The podcast is easy to do. We talk about interesting stuff. Check out Steven's channel as well. He needs the watch time to get monetization enabled, because YouTube decided he doesn't deserve it because he was just earning like what, 20, 30, 50 bucks, which to YouTube, that's not enough money to be important. Well, what's the gonna is? I'm not really sure exactly what shows there will be in 2019. I'm gonna have to brainstorm with Raul about what we can get out effectively and put enough popularity, I would say, because we're at the point where we really have to focus on things that may be popular. And this series, like I say, I'm happy that at least some of the episodes were popular. Like, people seem to enjoy some of them, even, well, at least click on them, if not enjoy, because people get upset when you point out that some countries murder your people and deport them and let them die, and, well, you know, things happen in history, and people get salty when you remind them of that, especially in today's political climate, where if you're not with us, you're against us, and if you're with us, you'll never mention anything bad we've ever done, even if that bad thing was done 100 years ago. It never existed. We are pure. We are the snowflake. I remember a time when the internet wasn't like this, when the Rafflecopter was the new big thing that everybody was posting. I kinda miss those days. They will not be coming back, sadly. We're way past that point. And why did it turn out like this? Well, everybody has internet now. Everybody. And you know, a lot of people out there are just horrible people. The worst. And now they can scream at anybody they want without end and poison the well for everyone. But again, that's probably something I should probably do on a different channel or a different show or something like that. It's not relevant to the Euro Game series. Thank you to everybody that watched it, everybody that shared it, and especially thank you to the people that supported us on Patreon, because, well, when Steam sort of took a nosedive completely, and it's worth 30 cents now. 30 cents. Goddamn blockchains, and they're being the future of media. And yeah, you can totally build a business on the blockchain. Things are going fine. The 70% of the people working on Steemit were fired because it wasn't sustainable. My god. But thanks to you, to the people that supported us, we are still here, and we will be here in 2019 unless I don't have time to do this anymore, because I'm probably going to be working 2 other jobs. Goodbye, everybody. Well, goodbye in the sense that tune in tomorrow for a different show, because there's going to be shows up until the 23rd of December with new stuff every day. But until then, goodbye.